Welcome back to a brand new edition of Views from the Booth. I am your host, Reed Becker, and joining me today on the top left, Jake Cohen, and on your bottom screen, Jacob Gannon. And first, thanks for joining me today.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for having me.
Today we'll be discussing as the NBA playoffs get underway tomorrow. We'll be going through some of the notable first-round matchups and some finals previews, predictions as well at the end. But let's get started right away first. One of the more entertaining 1 versus 8 seed matchups in kind of recent memory out in the Western Conference, Portland and the Lakers. I'll go first with this. Obviously, Portland has the best, it is a better matchup ratings-wise and all that. I think that Portland's going to give the Lakers all they've got, and it's going to be closer and longer series than most people would expect. Obviously, at the end of the day, though, the Lakers will probably wind up taking this because of the LeBron factor, but I wouldn't be surprised if it goes 5-6 games at the least. What do you guys
think? I think the biggest thing was Portland making it was definitely the best matchup that the Lakers could have faced in the first round. I mean, Phoenix, it was all hot and everything, but they've never seen any playoff experience whatsoever. I mean, Booker's, I believe, 4 years in the NBA, and he's not seen one game in the playoffs. Ayton's hasn't seen the playoffs. Same thing goes for that young Memphis Grizzlies team. So I think an experienced Damian Lillard-led Blazers team could definitely surprise some people and maybe steal a game or two. But I think the key thing is definitely who on LA is going to be able to guard Damian Lillard, because they're kind of weak at guards. I mean, you got Danny Green, you got Caruso, but I mean, it's Damian Lillard right now. Damian Lillard's averaging 45 a game right now in his past 4. I mean,
Yeah.
The Lakers
and the Lakers' best on-ball defenders out. Avery Bradley's not in the bubble right now.
Mm-hmm.
And
then it goes both ways. It goes both ways with who's going to be able to really lock down LeBron. I mean, Melo can't really guard LeBron. I mean, they don't. The Blazers
Melo can't guard a 5th grader, so it doesn't really matter what Melo.
Exactly. I mean, there's no wing on the Blazers to be able to defend LeBron. I mean, Davis, I think, could definitely have some trouble. The way Nurkic played last night versus Memphis, I mean, he definitely could give Davis a little bit of competition down low. But, I mean, LeBron's going to be the hugest X factor out there, offensively, defensively, just everything in between.
Right, and the other thing is I don't think the Lakers shooting keep up with LA. Or actually, Portland, rather. Mm-hmm. They'll be able to keep up with Portland. Let's move up to the Thunder Rockets series. This series specifically, you have no Westbrook for Houston now.
A Damian Lillard, CJ McCollum backcourt gets hot like they did in the second half of yesterday's game versus Memphis. I mean, they're going to be able to easily steal the game the way Los Angeles is playing offensively right now.
They'll steal a game. I agree with that. You think, but how much do you see it going?
I mean, I think they could push it to 6. I mean, if they steal too early, if they can get a game, think about it, if they steal a game 1, get a game 1 win, get a close game 2, and could potentially win a game 3. I mean, they're going to have the Lakers on their toes, would they not? They're going to have to see LeBron really come out and play. I mean, he didn't show much of himself in this bubble so far. I mean, you could see he's definitely been playing still, but there's no effort out there from LeBron. They clinched the 1. I mean, the Lakers look awful. I mean, they don't care right now. So they're going to have to flip that switch right now compared to a team where Dame's been playing to win for 8 straight games. He's got that mentality where he's going to come in playing as the underdog and just going to try to kill LeBron.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. I think they got to flip the switch fast, because the way Lillard's playing right now, I mean, yesterday too, like you could tell in the second half. I mean, I think that they had Dylan Brooks kind of face guard Lillard, play tight off the ball, and they gave the ball to CJ, and CJ took over with those late shots over Ja. So it's like, I mean, they don't even really need to ride Lillard for an entire game, especially if CJ can just play clutch at the end. So I think matchup-wise, I think Nurkic can match up well with Davis.
Hmm.
I just don't see anyone on Portland going to be able to guard LeBron, and I think just LeBron, if he wants to take over at will, he can.
He will,
I
but
think the best
but as the Lakers go further into the playoffs, their lack of depth is going to hurt
their
them
lack of depth will hurt them, yes,
because
Oh yeah,
especially like the Clippers. I think like that's going to be their biggest. If it goes to a long series, like seven, if we're talking like 7-game series, the Lakers will have the biggest issue against the Clippers just because depth wise, they're much more
right,
weak.
yeah.
right. It kind of reminds me this Lakers team kind of reminds me for LeBron, basically the team he had in Cleveland the year he left. You think about it, LeBron and AD. Outside of that, who else does he have? Basically nobody. Yeah, because once they're off the court, their numbers go way down.
Mhm.
Let's jump to the OKC Houston matchup series. For this one, obviously now there's no Russell Westbrook for Houston, which is a big loss on Houston's end. And because of that, I see this kind of going. I think it's definitely going to go 7 games, and I can see OKC squeezing this one out. You have no Westbrook, which was the big acquisition in the offseason to pair with Harden to try to push them into the finals to kind of save Mike D'Antoni's fate. And now he's out, so now you're going to basically be going back to Harden one-on-one iso ball, and they're going in a small ball lineup, which will not work in the playoffs. And OKC's no joke on their self. You have Chris Paul, who's been surprising everybody with leading this OKC team, and Billy Donovan's doing one heck of a job this season. And you can't forget Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and Steven Adams, who's going to destroy you on the glass. I think this is OKC's series.
I mean, I think the thing is for me is during this bubble, I've seen from what I've watched of OKC, they've had the highest highs and they've had the lowest lows. I mean, they had a 31-point blowout loss to Memphis after being up about 20 with 10 to play in the second quarter. They've had a 16-point win over Utah. They've had a win over the Clippers, I believe. So, I mean, they've had the highs, but they've had the lows. And I just don't know if the inconsistencies they showed in the exhibition games, if that's going to carry over. Because if it does, I don't know if you don't play consistently against James Harden, who's going to consistently drop at least 35 a game on you in the playoffs, I don't know if you can survive.
Well, the other thing is, but it goes both ways with the Rockets too. I mean, they can chuck up threes all they want, but if you go less, I don't know, 10% from 3 or whatever, which is very realistic for the Rockets because they're basically their whole offense. I don't see like James Harden historically in the playoffs trying to take over a playoff game, especially late in crunch time.
Another thing is I feel like, and this also could go both ways, it's just like same thing with the prior series and how like teams like Phoenix and Memphis are inexperienced. Some of the guys on both sides are not typically you would say experienced players in the playoffs. I mean, we both know how Harden and Chris Paul fare in the playoffs. I mean, they don't typically shine, as we would say. I mean, and then you got the second option for the Thunder and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. I mean, what playoff experience does he have? What about a guy like Danilo Gallinari? Goes both ways then to Houston, who's got a guy like Daniel House playing key minutes right now. I mean, he doesn't have significant experience. He's getting limited minutes in the past playoff experiences he's had with Houston. So now that he's gotten a bigger role in that offense, what is he going to do with that time? I mean,
It's very true. I mean, like Reed said, I think this one could tip either way. I think it's gonna be who wants it more towards the end of the series, but this one I definitely could see going 6 or 7. I know OKC's very good defensively. I just don't know who specifically they would put on Harden. What do you guys think?
I don't think you need to put anything on Harden late in situations because I think he's just going to brick every shot. If you just look at past history, to be honest with you.
I mean, what about over the course of the game, though? Not necessarily clutch moments.
In that situation,
Do you think they would put Chris Paul on Harden?
I think regardless of who's put on Harden, he's going to score the basketball at
Well,
will.
you're
I
going to
mean,
get points. I mean, but the idea is to keep up, which I think they're more than capable to do.
mhm.
And the point guard matchup, you look at it, it's straight out even. Like Harden and Chris Paul. I mean, so I don't think they're going to have any difficulty with that.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. Harden will get his share. I think offensively, then it's going to be. I mean, with the Rockets, the Rockets are going to get their 120, like 120, 130 points a game. So it's just going to figure out how OKC is going to get that distribution for themselves
And I think the big
offensively.
key almost the word that sums up this whole series is going to be consistency. I mean, whoever wants it more and shows up and plays consistent basketball is going to be the one that wins the series. I mean, both teams are get the highest highs, the lowest lows, like we've been discussing. So whoever's there and can consistently play good basketball offensively and defensively is going to take this series.
Yeah, that would be definitely absolutely true. And I'll just go with OKC in 7 for that one, though, because if we're talking consistent clutch basketball, I never trust James Harden. Let's go back to the Eastern Conference now, though. Sixers and Celtics. So this one I think is going to be a sweep. Maybe Philadelphia's lucky if they get one, but this is all Boston series. Sixers are the most inconsistent team, and they've looked like absolute awful in this bubble situation as well. And I think that's because of that. Brett Brown's going to be gone after this series, and then obviously there's no Ben Simmons this series as well. Philadelphia's just been really a clown show this whole season.
Yeah, I mean the loss of Simmons hurts so much. I mean, they've seen a lot of scoring effort in the end, towards the end of the bubble, from Harris, Richardson, Horford just stepping up. But I mean, they don't look like the Sixers team we saw in the regular season at home. I mean, this is not the Sixers team that played before coronavirus. I'm a big believer of Boston prior to the season beginning. I don't see the series being close. I mean, Boston started to really find their footing near the end of the bubble. I mean, highlighted by a massive blowout win over the Toronto Raptors. I mean, they're finding their footing. They're getting getting their role players involved. I mean, look at a guy like Brad Wanamaker. I mean, he's putting up about 10 a game right now off the bench in these past few bubble games. I mean, they can go 8-9 men deep for the whole playoffs, and they're not going to have a single worry scoring the ball.
I agree. Well, yeah, that's the thing. Boston can shoot out the lights, and the only way Philadelphia has even a chance, I think, in this series is if they're going to have to go old school basketball with Embiid to the basket, back to the basket. I don't see any other way. Really, Philadelphia has any shot in this series. Now let's just at towards the end, coming out of the East. By the way, first of all, let's just before we get to that, I got a text from one of our guys that was supposed to be on here but backed out at the last minute, saying for someone to pick the Lakers. I'll just say that for now that the Lakers, no one picks the Lakers because the Lakers don't have enough depth, so that's not going to work in the playoffs.
I just think personally the Lakers are not the same Lakers team we saw before the bubble. They just do not look like they have it at all.
Right.
I mean, right now, I'll give you that. Right now,
go ahead.
They look like a completely different team.
Right, and that was the argument coming back into the bubble. Yes, they were the first seed in the Western Conference, and they were winning every game. But you have that 4-month hiatus during the pandemic, and then chemistry doesn't just come back in a snap of a finger like that. So
yeah, momentum too. Like a lot of the NBA is carried by momentum, and because of the hiatus, like that
it's also
it
part
dropped.
of that's also now. Right. No, I was going to say part of that also talking about momentum. The Milwaukee Bucks have also lost a lot of momentum right now. I mean, you have Giannis is headbutting people left and right. You have the Bucks just losing games that you wouldn't expect them to lose when they were before season shut down. But that brings us to our next point coming out of the Eastern Conference. if we were still in a real normal situation before the pandemic, I would obviously go with Milwaukee. But I think I'm gonna have to go with Toronto in this situation. Milwaukee, I can't trust. I don't trust. I have to see Milwaukee do something in a clutch situation with Giannis before I can trust them to go to the finals. I think Toronto matches up well with them. I think they have a lot of good shooting, which it will help in the playoffs, which also Milwaukee will give up a lot of threes as well. So I think Toronto matches up really well, and they'll wind up taking this in I would say 6-7 series.
Well, lucky for Milwaukee and Toronto, I don't even think they make it past that to the final. I'm rolling right now. Miami Heat beat them in the semis. The way they're playing right now, the way they're shooting the ball, the way Eric Spoelstra runs that team, they have what it takes to beat the Giannis team in 7. But that's not going to be that team coming to the East. I just said it before. I'm rolling with the Boston Celtics. I mean, Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, dynamic duo out there at the wing, which is the most versatile position out there in the NBA, followed by 2 hard-nosed bigs in Daniel Tice and Cantor. You got guard play in Kemba. You got another wing.
Kemba's injury prone. If you're going to have to minutes restriction him during the playoffs, that's a big no-no.
The problem is if you minutes restriction, Boston's not worried. They can run 9-10 men deep. I mean, that's not a problem. They'll put in a backup guy who could play more than serviceable minutes. They showed in the bubble. They showed in the regular games. Kemba didn't play heavy minutes, and they still were able to play great basketball.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, they're relying on Brown and Tatum a lot, and if you were to ask me about like 2 weeks ago, like right when the bubble started, I was thinking Toronto. But now, honestly, I'm not sure. I think the East is really open.
Mm-hmm.
I think in terms of depth, I think Boston has the best team. I'm just not sure who's going to come. I'm just not sure who's going to come out. Toronto, Nick Nurse is, he can develop a defensive scheme, I think, to try and neutralize Giannis, at least to make it a competitive series.
He was able to do that last year. He was able to neutralize Giannis a little bit last year.
Yeah, it's just going to be interesting to see, who's got, a lot of these teams that we're talking about right now, like Toronto, Boston, Miami, those 3 teams specifically have very, very strong guard play.
They run some trials. They all have very smart, defensive-minded coaches, and they all play more of a modern style of NBA, not truly through a post-up big. Rather, they play guards, and if they do have that big, they're stretching the floor. You can see that in Miami with Kelly Olynyk, for example. He's averaging, I think, just over 1.5 threes a game. I mean, it's the modern style of the NBA, and these young coaches playing more defensive-minded basketball is just, I think, going to take over a guy like Budenholzer, who runs a more fast-paced, offensive-minded team in Milwaukee.
Yeah, I think in terms of guard play, I think out of those, Miami, Toronto, Boston, Milwaukee, I think Milwaukee lacks the most in terms of guard play with George Hill, DiVincenzo on Van Vliet, Lowry, Kemba Brown, or the non-hero Dragic type of combo. So, I mean, I think it's going to be, which guards out of these teams can play the best. And then
like we've been saying the whole time, it's going to come down to who wants it more. I mean, there's no fans anymore. It's just straight up basketball. Whoever wants to be there and wants to win these games is going to win the games.
And it's just the Eastern Conference is really tight. I think in the West, if you look at it in the West, you got the Lakers and you got the Clippers, right? And then I think that the other teams in that Western Conference, there's a pretty significant drop-off in terms of teams. But in the East, I think it's much closer.
If we said before the bubble, I think Milwaukee had that significant drop-off. But since the bubble, I think the East is more than wide open.
100%
I think any team 1 through I think 6
Has a
can
shot.
should have a shot. I don't see personally. I don't see Brooklyn or Orlando really making a
No.
strong push. I mean, I just don't think they're
Brooklyn
ready
might
for
get a
it.
game or something from
Yeah.
Toronto, but that's it.
Yeah,
But that's it. Yeah.
yeah,
They're not
but
going to do
I
more.
think otherwise you could put 1 through 5, 1 through 6 in the East. I mean, it's a toss up. You could pick out of a hat and have a good shot to pick who's going to come out of the East. I mean,
Right.
then I think the West,
Yeah.
like most people expect, I think it's going to be both LAs. I mean, I don't see Kawhi not making it. I don't see LeBron not making it. I just think those are the 2 best playoff players we have in the NBA right now. They know what it takes. They know what to do. They're going to get it done.
Yeah, I think, and then I think, as we mentioned earlier, the only thing is that the Lakers' death is going to destroy them come that time against the Clippers. And the other thing is, I mean, there was a game like what they beat the Lakers beat Denver, and people were like throwing parades all over the place. But meanwhile, it had to take a Kyle Kuzma 3 at the end against Denver's backups. So going up against that, I can assure you right now, based on that play, that's not going to get the job done against Kawhi and the Clippers.
Yep.
Against a better team like the Clippers.
Yeah.
And then looking ahead to the finals, then, if you had to say, so you, Jake Cohen, you said Boston for the East. And Gannon, Jacob Gannon, you said coming out of the East.
Right now, I'm probably going to go with Boston too. Boston or Miami.
All right. So against, I still think it might be Toronto. I think Toronto has the best wise. But either way, assuming so finals matchup Clippers against one of those 3, I'm still taking the Clippers though.
I don't see how Kawhi loses. Hate to break it to all you other Lakers fans, Celtics fans, every other fan out there. Kawhi is a silent killer. He's gonna get it done.
I agree. Boston, Toronto, Miami, doesn't really matter. Toronto would be.
I don't think it matters.
Right, doesn't. No. Toronto would be a better storyline because it's against his former team, but it doesn't make a difference.
It doesn't matter. Whoever comes out of the East has the potential to potentially steal a game. I mean, but it's Kawhi freaking Leonard out here. We saw what he did last year. We saw what he did in San Antonio. I mean, he's the reincarnation of Kobe Bryant in the playoffs. It's crazy. He does what he needs to. He gets the rings, and the job's done.
Yeah, I mean, he's already been a 2-time MVP in 2 different teams. So,
yeah.
And then lastly, I'll just leave it on this comment. Back to the Lakers against the Clippers Western Conference Finals. Assuming we get to that, I'm just going to say that the other point to factor in with the Clippers and Lakers is the Clippers destroyed the Lakers in the playoffs. Not the playoffs, but in the season matchups rather, which is already just a big enough sample size for that. But that's all we got for you today. For Jake Cohen, Jacob Gannon, I'm Reed Becker, and we'll see you guys next time.